Undercover boss buys a branded watch in his own store, could not believe the manager whispering behind him. The store gleamed with marble floors, crystal lighting, and glass displays filled with Zevrano watches. Timepieces worth more than most people's rent, but beneath the polished surface, something rotted. A man in a weathered hoodie and scuffed boots stepped through the doors. Heads turned, whispers flickered like static. Then came the sentence. A voice, low and careless, floated from behind the counter. "Make sure he gets the fake. We'll ship the original to Houston with the rest." The man paused. He had just entered the store, but now he felt like he'd stepped into a crime scene. That whisper wasn't meant for him, but he heard it. And what they didn't know, he wasn't just another customer. He was the man who built the company. Miguel Santiago was 58th Latin American, quiet by nature but fierce when it came to integrity. His hands, though softened with age, still bore the faint scars of the past, reminders of the countless hours he spent in a dusty workshop in El Paso, Texas, crafting watches by hand long before anyone believed in his dream. Zevrano wasn't born from wealth. It was born from grit, from Miguel's father, who taught him how to sand brass and polish glass with nothing but old cloth and patience. From the weekends he gave up, from the nights he slept beside a workbench because he couldn't afford both rent and ambition. He named the brand Zevrano after his mother's hometown in Bolivia, a tribute to the people who raised him to value truth over appearance. Every tick of a Zevrano timepiece was meant to reflect honor, heritage, and honesty. And for a while it did. The brand grew. One watch became 100, then thousands. Hollywood took notice. Athletes wore them. Awards were won. Miguel was celebrated. But with success came something dangerous. Distance. He stepped back, trusted others to carry the torch, to protect what he had built. But one day a letter arrived. An email from a man Miguel remembered well, a retired engineer who had once written Miguel a heartfelt thank you for making a watch he wore to his daughter's wedding. Now his words cut like glass. "They sold me a Zevrano. I had it appraised. Turns out it's a replica. I trusted your brand. I trusted you." Miguel read it twice, then again. His chest tightened. That wasn't just a complaint. It was a crack in the very foundation he'd spent his life laying, brick by brick. He dove into reviews, records, forums. The signs were everywhere. Serial number inconsistencies, flimsy materials, confused buyers, denials from managers, and whispers, always whispers, of something rotten spreading from within. And that's when he made the hardest decision of his life. He took off the suit, left behind the title, and put on a hoodie that reminded him of the days when nobody knew his name. No press, no announcements. Just one man walking back into the house he built to see if it was still standing. Not as a CEO, but as a father to his legacy. Before he even reached the counter, Miguel heard the sharp edge of tension cutting through the boutique's soft jazz. A woman, early 30s, slim, olive coat trembling slightly on her shoulders, stood near the exit, clutching a white gift box to her chest. Her voice was hushed, almost cracked from trying to keep her composure. "I bought this watch for my dad's retirement," she said, blinking fast. "It was supposed to be special. He wore it twice and the strap just snapped." She opened the box with trembling fingers. "It's plastic. The appraisal says it's a fake." Her eyes begged for understanding. Behind the glass counter, Tanya barely looked up. Late 40s, sleek ponytail, gold necklace heavy with self-importance. She adjusted her blazer sleeve like the woman's pain was an inconvenience. "If you bought it from this store," Tanya said with mechanical cheer, "then it's authentic. Maybe your dad broke it. Happens." The woman's breath caught. "He's 72. He cried when I gave it to him. You think he would have broken it on purpose?" Miguel felt a twist in his stomach. His shoes felt rooted to the floor, his pulse rising. Then Victor stepped in, a salesman in his 20s with gelled hair and a smirk that reeked of commission. He chuckled softly and leaned in, his voice louder than necessary. "Ma'am," he said, dragging out the last syllable, "if you can't afford a real Zevrano, maybe don't come in here accusing us. A knockoff bought online doesn't make us responsible." The woman's jaw dropped. Her lips trembled. "Are you serious right now?" Victor raised an eyebrow. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Tanya crossed her arms. Unless you have the original receipt and the warranty card, we're done here. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. She looked around, at the polished walls, the luxury display, the other shoppers pretending not to notice. No one moved. She turned to the door, but not before whispering under her breath, "My dad saved for months. He wore it like it was gold." The bell above the door jingled softly as she disappeared into the cold. Miguel stood frozen, his breath caught in his chest. His hands, calloused from decades of shaping dials and polishing bezels, clenched at his sides. He had built Zevrano to make people feel something: worth, beauty, pride, not shame, not heartbreak. That wasn't customer service, and that was cruelty wearing cologne. But before we dive deeper into the storm that Miguel's about to unleash, if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on more powerful stories like this one. He slowly walked toward the counter, heart heavy, eyes still on the door the woman had just exited through. Victor didn't recognize him. "Help you, sir?" Miguel nodded calmly. "Yes," he said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "I'm looking for something special." He turned to the display case, eyes scanning the watches, his watches, and waited. Waited to see what they'd try to sell him. Waited to see if the lie would be dressed in gold or exposed by silence. And more importantly, he waited to see how much lower this betrayal could go. Miguel leaned in slightly, tapping the display glass with a subtle firmness. "Could I see the arc light chrono?" he asked. Victor blinked, then chuckled as if Miguel had just asked to test drive a Ferrari while holding a bus pass. "The arc light?" he repeated, glancing at Tanya. "We don't usually show that one unless someone's, serious." Miguel raised an eyebrow calmly. "I'm serious." Victor looked him up and down. Hoodie, worn sneakers, hands slightly calloused, face softened with time, but marked by precision. No expensive watch on his wrist, no briefcase, no buyer scent. Tanya approached, heels clicking like a metronome of judgment. She narrowed her eyes with mock curiosity. "Heard that hoodie whispering to us earlier," she said with a half smile, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "All right, let's give him one of the display models. See what dreams taste like." Victor nodded and disappeared into the back. Miguel stood there under the warm, golden spotlight, surrounded by glass cases and quiet luxury. Every second dragged. He could feel Tanya's gaze press into him like a thumb-testing fruit. The other staff whispered in corners, stifled giggles, watching the show unfold. Victor returned and handed over the watch, gingerly, as if passing a Fabergé egg to a child he didn't trust. Miguel cradled it in his palm. At first glance, it looked right. The arc light chrono had always been one of his proudest designs. Silver bezel with hand-polished grooves. Layered dial with a deep obsidian finish. Sapphire crystal curved like the edge of a raindrop. But this was wrong. It was too light. Off balance. The dial was navy, not black. The clasp clicked like tin. And when he turned it over, no serial number. Just a flat metal plate with a generic stamp. Miguel's chest tightened. "Do you have the certificate for this one?" he asked gently. Tanya crossed her arms. "Do you really need it?" she said with a smirk. "You haven't even said how you're paying." Miguel began. Victor cut in with a grin. "You want to finance it over a few years?" he asked, loud enough for others to hear. "Or are you just here to dream for a few more minutes before heading back to your shift?" A snort from the counter. A soft laugh from a younger employee by the espresso machine. A scoff from the security guard by the door. Miguel stood there, still, silent. The man who had sketched the arc light chrono by candlelight while his wife slept beside him. Who had traveled to Geneva with just one prototype and a suitcase full of hope. Who had watched his dream worn by presidents, artists, and astronauts. Now mocked in his own store. Something in him fractured, but he swallowed it. His hands trembled slightly, not from rage but from restraint, because he wasn't done yet. And the worst, the part that would shatter everything, was still waiting in the shadows. Miguel turned to leave, heart pounding under the weight of humiliation, when something stopped him. Two employees, unaware of his presence, just feet behind a tall column, strolled past with the casual arrogance of people who believed no one was listening. One of them, An inventory clerk named Darren snickered as he pulled out his phone. "Denver got their batch last week," he said under his breath. "Houston gets these tomorrow. We keep the replicas flowing, baby." The other employee, a younger man with jittery eyes, replied with a half laugh. "You think anyone notices? They're all chasing a label. Half of them don't even check the serial." Miguel froze. Time didn't stop, but his breath did. That whisper from earlier. It hadn't been a joke. It hadn't been background noise. It was a confession. They weren't just selling fakes here and there. This was systematic, coordinated. Cities across the country, Denver, Houston, who knows how many more, were receiving the real Zevrano masterpieces under the table, likely sold to private collectors or through back-alley deals for inflated profits. Meanwhile, everyday customers, like the woman with tears in her eyes, were handed high-end replicas barely worth a tenth of the price. Miguel's knees weakened beneath the rage and heartbreak. He steadied himself against a marble pillar, pressing his palm against the cold stone as if it could anchor him. These weren't just counterfeits. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was an attack on his legacy. Each Zevrano was born from years of labor, crafted with precision and infused with integrity. It wasn't just about the watch, it was about what it stood for: honesty, craftsmanship, pride. And now, his name was being stamped onto lies. He looked up, eyes glassy but burning with a focused fury. It was time. Not for a press release, not for a meeting, for truth, delivered face to face. Miguel didn't storm. He didn't shout. He simply turned, slowly, calmly, and walked back to the glass counter, back to the same cheap replica that had been handed to him like a scrap. The laughter had faded. Tanya was adjusting her scarf. Victor leaned lazily against the register, still riding the high of public mockery. Miguel picked up the fake arc-light chrono, cradled it in his palm, and gently set it down. Deliberate, reverent, like he was laying a wounded soldier to rest. Then he reached into his worn hoodie and pulled out his leather wallet. From it, a black ID card, edged in silver, gleaming under the store's boutique lighting. He slid it across the counter. No words, just a slow, echoing slide. Victor frowned, then picked it up. Read it once, then twice. Founder and chairman, Zevrano Global. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Tanya stepped forward, heels clicking, and snatched the card. Her eyes darted. "This has to be fake," she stammered. "This is a joke, right?" Miguel finally spoke. Quiet, low, unshakable. "I carved the original arc light with my own hands, in a garage, with my father's tools, before we could even afford heat in the winter." Tanya blinked. "I know every gear in that watch, every groove, every imperfection, because I designed it to outlive me. And today you sold me a hollow lie in its place." He turned his gaze on Victor, voice tightening. "And you mocked a customer for crying over her father's gift. You mocked me for not wearing a suit. You laughed while stealing my name." The store went still. Even the security guard froze, hand half raised to his radio. Miguel straightened, the weight of decades behind him. "This store is no longer under your control," he said. "You've sold fakes under my banner. You've defrauded my customers. You've taken what was sacred and sold it for scraps." He pointed to the guard. "Lock the doors. No one leaves. Call corporate. Call legal. Internal affairs is already on their way." Tanya stumbled backward, her voice trembling. "Please, Mr. Santiago, we didn't." Miguel's stare sliced through her like a blade. "You didn't think I'd come." And then, silence. Within 48 hours, Miguel turned every resource he had into a blade. Internal auditors, compliance officers, and a third-party forensics firm swept into the boutique like a silent army. Miguel, sleeves rolled up, sat in the back room combing through shipment manifests, invoice trails, and inventory logs himself. His hands trembled, not from age but rage, as he held side-by-side comparisons of his original designs and the forgeries now spread across the table. "This clasp, it's a molded alloy," he whispered. "We use hand-forged stainless steel. This is trash." The lead auditor, pale-faced, looked up from her laptop. "We found altered serial logs for at least 8 stores. They're shipping authentic stock to off-site locations and selling the replicas in-store. How many units? Just over 1,200. Market value, roughly $8.4 million. Miguel closed his eyes and exhaled through his nose like a man trying not to explode. The next morning, news broke like a thunderclap. Federal agents arrived at the flagship boutique with a warrant. Tanya stood behind the counter, still in heels and pearls, sipping espresso. "This is outrageous," she barked as handcuffs clamped around her wrists. "You can't just storm in." The agent cut her off. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for corporate fraud, interstate trafficking of counterfeit goods, and obstruction of a federal investigation." Victor, now pale and sweating, tried to slink out the back door. Miguel was waiting. "Leaving already?" he asked coldly. "I thought you were the face of Zevrano. Come on, smile." Victor's jaw dropped. "Sir, I didn't know. Tanya ran it. She told me it was authorized inventory." "No," Miguel said, stepping forward. "You looked a woman in the eye and mocked her for buying a gift for her father. That wasn't Tanya. That was all you." Cameras captured the moment Victor was cuffed and dragged out. Reporters shouted questions. Shoppers stared. But Miguel said nothing. He wasn't there to perform. He was there to fix what was broken. Later that night, as dusk settled over El Paso, Miguel dialed a number from memory. The woman from the boutique, the one who'd been insulted, shamed, and dismissed. She picked up after one ring. "Hello? Miss Alvarez?" Miguel said, his voice gentle. "This is Miguel Santiago." There was a pause. I didn't think you'd actually..." "I'm coming by," he said. "I have something for your father, if that's all right." They met in a modest brick house on the city's edge. No marble floors, no crystal chandeliers, just a warm kitchen that smelled of chamomile tea and old photos on the wall. The old man stepped forward, cautious. His wrist still bore the cracked strap from the replica arc light. "I wore it even after it broke," he said with a quiet smile. "She saved for months to buy it." Miguel held out a wooden box, velvet-lined, polished walnut, inside a real ArcLight chrono, one of the first 10 ever made, serial number 0009. "I made this piece with my father," Miguel said. 40 hours of handcrafting, sapphire crystal, calf leather strap, and a heartbeat I can still feel when I look at it. He placed it in the old man's hand and gently closed his fingers around it. "It belongs to someone who understands what it means." Tears streamed down the daughter's face. "Why would you do this?" Miguel smiled, weary but proud. "Because people like you remind me why I built Zevrano. Not for status, not for show, but for people who believe in meaning." 1 week later, every Zevrano employee across the globe tuned in to a mandatory live broadcast. The screen was dark. Then Miguel appeared, standing alone in the original El Paso workshop where Zevrano began. Tools hung on pegboards behind him. The wooden bench scarred with burn marks and chisel cuts. No stage, no lighting crew. Just a man returning to the forge. "My name is Miguel Santiago," he said, "and I've come to apologize." Silence. "I let this company become a stranger to me. I trusted people who dressed well but thought little. I forgot that luxury means nothing without integrity." He held up the fake ArcLight chrono. "Let the camera zoom in. This is what greed looks like." Then he held up the real one. "And this is what love looks like." He slammed the fake one on the bench, shattered. "From this day forward," he continued, "every Zevrano boutique will carry 2 things behind its counter: my name and my values. You will treat the janitor with the same respect you show a celebrity. You will never judge a buyer by their clothes, their accent, or the balance on their card." His voice hardened. "If you ever humiliate a customer again, if you ever think the brand is bigger than the people who believe in it, you will be gone. Overnight, no warning." He leaned forward, eyes burning through the lens. "And if that scares you, leave now." The feed went silent, and then exploded in applause. Across the world, employees stood and clapped. Some cried, some shook their heads in shame. But everyone knew the old Zevrano was gone. Miguel walked out of the frame, but not before glancing once at the watch on his wrist. The first arc light, still ticking, because some legacies aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in silence, in whispers, in fire, and sometimes in the hands of the man who remembers what it all used to mean. If you love the twists and turns of today's story, make sure to subscribe and join the Undercover Files family for more exclusive undercover investigations.